Just because it can get big doesn't mean it has to.
Yeah. You know what? And just sort of recognizing like you don't need to have my dad was a farmer, so you don't need to have the shiniest tractor in the field.
I love it.
Have one that works. And I explain to people, I'm just like, they're like, oh, how many clients do you have? I'm like, I work enough. Like I work enough. So you'd have to, I think it's that determination of what enough is for you.
Mhm.
Like what is enough for you? Like is success a whole bunch of clients and a whole bunch of money? And what is it? It all comes down to that values work, which is, the premise of that sort of acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yeah.
But it's all comes back to that really having a good look and really being honest with yourself about what your values are.
You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Nink. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. When I started the Brave OT podcast, I thought of a few OTs who I wanted to, for sure, interview right away. And Michele was one of those. Michele Hampton is an OT here in Calgary who also works in mental health. And I had the pleasure of helping her start her private practice. We had this conversation late in 2022. And I'm just releasing it now because it was important to support Michele in taking some time to adjust to some really important personal changes. Michele is the owner of Opening Doors Occupational Therapy. She's a nature-based OT. She's a mental health OT and someone that I've really enjoyed working with in a coaching capacity and having as a local mental health peer. In this interview, we dive into curiosity, finding awe, finding your groove as you start out in a private practice, finding courage, and learning that as an OT, you have all the skills you need to figure things out and be a good business owner. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much for being here, Michele. I'm really excited that you are here as one of my first podcast interviewees.
Thanks, Carlin. You know what? I was really excited when you told me that you were starting to do a podcast. And I was like, I feel that we're going to have lots to talk about because we always have when we've chatted together. So this is a pretty exciting event for me as well, too. And good for you for doing this.
Thank you. I've been talking about it for a long time. As you know, we even had one plan to record it while camping or something in a trailer.
We did that. We did have some summer plans with that.
So tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
So I'm Michele Hampton, and I am a private practice occupational therapist in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Um, and I started with my private practice. It kind of officially launched sort of February, March of 2022. But I started working on it with you, Carlin, actually a year ago, last October.
Was it last October?
Last October that we started working together. I'd kind of honestly kind of creeped you for probably 4 or 5 months leading up to that, because just trying to get the nerve up and to believe that I could actually start a private practice and, set on the fence with that. And finally one day said, okay, this is it. I've just got to contact her. And I think that the ball has been rolling ever since.
And I think there's a readiness in there too, right? That
Yeah.
sometimes we can kind of give ourselves a hard time about delay, but it's like in that contemplation and preparation, we are getting ready to take action.
Yeah.
And you did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. That whole sort of like, I'm just going to, some days I'm like, if I just do one thing every day, to get my private practice going. So I'm private practice mental health occupational therapist. So I work with adults in the Calgary community. I do individual clients who are struggling with mental health concerns, both from an individual therapy and an individual occupational therapy perspective. But even within the individual therapy role, I think I always meld into that occupational therapist, right? That's just the lens I look things through. I do some groups. I do some group work as well too. I'm a nature therapist, which is really kind of new and exciting. So I incorporate nature for wellness as much as I can within my individual sessions with folks. And I have some really exciting stuff coming up to do some nature therapy, immersive wellness with some groups in the Calgary community. I get referrals from a clinic. I'm doing some subcontract insurance work and little bits and bobs here. And it's fantastic. Like, yeah.
I love your story of how you went about getting referrals from that clinic. Do you care to share that? It was so brave, like so brave. This is the Brave OT podcast. So tell your brave story.
So last February, or February earlier this year, there was a new doctor's clinic that was opened up close to the community I live in Calgary. And my family and I needed a new doctor because our doctor had retired. And so I booked an appointment, go in for a meet and greet, and went and spoke to the doctor. And he asked what I was doing. And I told him that I was kind of on the cusp of starting this private practice. And he said, "Why don't you come and work out of here?" And I'm like, "Really? Like, really? I don't know. Like, should I?" And he goes, "Yeah." He was just a brand new clinic and he wanted someone with a mental health background to come and provide some supports and services and for the folks that he saw in his clinic. So I sort of came home and hummed and hawed and
That
called a
was
couple,
not the plan for the appointment.
not at all, called a couple people and made some inquiries and
Yeah.
but yeah, okay, let's do this. So I get some clinic referrals there and have use of clinic space whenever I need or want it there. So that's been pretty exciting.
Yeah,
Being able
so
to work
exciting. That is really cool because I think that it's just sometimes it's these unexpected moments that are a turning point in our practice where you kind of think, okay, well, it just came up in an assessment, right? What do you do? That led
yeah.
to other things. I've had similar things in my business where it's just,
Mm.
oh, yeah, I've got a listing on SEOT and the right person calls that leads to a plethora of work. And there's a business started.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how that happens. Also found that just sort of tapping into that community of folks that I know within the Calgary community and just being willing to be open and honest and talk about what I do. People are curious, people are interested, and they want to find out more. Right.
Hmm. Ah, really cool. Because a lot of people kind of keep it on the down low. They're like, oh, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, I'm an occupational therapist. That's what I do.
Right.
But if you can help inspire curiosity, people want to know more and you just never know where that goes.
Exactly.
Really cool. So I also work in adult mental health here in Calgary. And I love this sense of never once has it been like, oh, but now we're in competition. That's not even a thought, right? It's that we
No.
both can help people and we both want to support each other. We enjoy each other as colleagues and in our coaching relationship too. And it's pretty cool. I don't think a lot of industries have that like we do as OTs. What do you think that's all about?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think I totally agree with you. I feel that like as OTs that we really do that whole sort of companion walk beside
Yeah.
um supporting each other
Yeah.
with that instead of that sort of like competition. I'm going to go first. No, I'm going to go first. And so I felt like that with you as well, right? Like that we sort of, if we have questions or comments or thoughts or we can tap into each other, just have that conversation. And I do believe that within the OT community, it would be probably what you'd see a lot of how people would work with each other.
I mean, there's only a handful of OTs in Calgary, and our city's a million-ish, right? Give or take. And I bet you there's only a handful of OTs doing pure mental health in our city. We need
Yeah,
more of us.
yeah, absolutely.
You win, I win. I win, you win.
Exactly. Well,
Mhm.
and because like sometimes I'm like this this client might not be in my wheelhouse or my time and just refer people on. Like I'm pretty honest with it. Like I come to the realization I know the folks that I work best with and I know the folks that probably somebody else would. And I have no hesitation on referring people
Yeah.
to someone else.
What is your ideal person that you work with?
Oh gosh. How many times did we have conversations about the beginning, Carlin? Uh, I really struggled with this one just because I'd had such vast experience in the past.
And I remember it being hard for you to conceptualize having choice in the matter.
Yeah, 100% having choice because of, with all my years in public health,
Yeah.
people referred to me and I just had to take them.
Yeah.
You know what? I think the ideal client is somebody who is willing and open to consider change and options in their life. Historically, I'd been like, it's a woman and, in this age range who has ADHD. But I think it's folks who are willing to be open to consider change
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
option, right?
That's one of the nice things about pure private practice work is somebody's coming to you, giving
Yes.
dollars out of their pocket and
Yeah.
saying, "I'm ready. Help me figure out what to do here."
Yes. It's very different. It's
Mhm.
very different having people who do the work and who work harder than I do. Right? Because in public health for many years, like, I worked harder than everybody else, so this is kind of a nice change.
And you had a lot more severity to the conditions that the people you were dealing with, I imagine.
Yeah, with public health, I was
Yeah.
working in the community with people with severe and persistent mental health concerns, part of a multidisciplinary team, so, yeah, like, really, even though I was an OT, I was kind of a mental health case manager. The only thing that sometimes I did any different from a nurse would be that I didn't give injections.
Mhm.
Really, like, you sort of are just a general mental health case manager and, dealing with lots of addictions and homelessness and pretty severe mental health concerns. So I really had to, like, coming into private practice, even thinking about sort of like how much I was going to charge people. Um, I really struggled with that for so long because the population of folks that I worked with would have never been able to afford to see prior prior to coming into private practice. And then I had to, come to some peace and sort of acceptance that these folks, there was the system was out there and I wasn't the only one that could support them. There was still people and other OTs and other social workers and nurses that were providing that level of support. So, coming to some sort of place of peace with that. It took a little bit, but I've kind of worked around it. Well, here's how I've worked around it. Part of my nature practice now, I'm going to be doing monthly nature sessions with that population of folks. So, you know, I'm kind of going back in a little bit of a
Yeah.
different, yeah.
Yeah. Makes you feel that it's not all a big capitalist journey.
Exactly. That
Because I know you, you're money hungry, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Talk
Pay me the money.
It's so Canadian though too. We kind of go, but healthcare's free, so why would anybody pay
Mhm.
for this? And then go and see people with more mild to moderate conditions even, and, "Ooh, why would they pay for this?" But they do, and if we can get people in more of a prevention before things get really
Percent.
severe, we're saving the healthcare system dollars, we're helping people thrive, helping people stay in their jobs rather than go off work and then need us 2 years later.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, that whole sort of prevention. Because I think that so much of my work prior to private practice was just that sort of like, you're just jumping in because the wheels are falling off the bus, right? Where
Mhm.
now it's like, let's not get those wheels off the bus.
Yeah, we could just tighten them a little.
They tighten them or they need to bear, right?
Yeah. Now, you mentioned to me that you have been working on slowing down. Tell me more about that.
Oh, well, do you know, I started private practice. One of the big sort of things that I kind of wrapped my head around was that whole value of time. And time value is really high on my list that and I wanted to get my time back. I wanted to get my time back and use it differently and more productively and proactively. And so that's kind of how I started within a private practice. And then I did that training in that PGAP, the Progressive Goal Attainment Program, and was taking some subcontracts, some insurance clients. And I don't know, I was like a kid at the counter of the candy store and they'd be like, "Can you take another refill?" I'd be like, "Yes." "Can you take another refill?" "Yes." "Can you take another refill?" "Yes." And then, it's July and I'm like, "How come I have all these like, I have so many clients." Like, I didn't want to work this much this summer.
And with PGAP, you have to see them every week for up to
Yeah.
10 weeks. Like, you're
Yeah.
committed.
You're committed, right? And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." So
Yeah.
I had all these PGAP clients and short duration CBT clients, and I worked a lot this summer. And so it was very interesting for me to see because I realized that the more clients I had, the less time I had to sort of create or evolve my private practice into where I really wanted it to go because I was too busy seeing individual clients and too busy keeping up with all the charting,
Yeah.
the paperwork. So I'm like, okay, September and October, I'm going to dial it down. Like, I'm going to dial it down. I'm going to say no to referrals. I'm still going to take some, but I actually took my old school daytimer because, I do like the old school.
You know
And
I do too.
I planned it out. Like, I planned it out how many clients I was gonna see a week combined with the clients that I see at the clinic, and really defined time in my schedule for client time so that I could have space to think about the evolving of my private practice. And it's been really good. Like, it's allowed me that space, right? I'll go out for a walk at lunchtime or when it's nice outside because those are things you can do when you're when you work from home, in your private practice. And I would just be thinking about how, because I wanted to evolve or grow the nature therapy part of my practice. And I would just be like, I'd have these like almost mid stride sort of moments of just like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'd go home, I'd connect with somebody. And yeah, like now the practice is growing so much where I didn't have that sort of space to create. I realize I need space in my day, in my time, in my schedule to create.
So putting that in context, within months of starting your private practice, you were too busy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, really, I wasn't gonna start seeing clients until April, and then I was getting referrals from the clinic in February. I had some February and quite a bit in March. I was
Yeah.
working. Yeah, I've had referrals, and like I said, I started turning them away
Yeah. Congratulations.
for September, not October, because I wanna work enough. I don't wanna work like, I don't want to work too much, but I could if I wanted to, right? Like, I certainly would have had the referral base to work much more.
And
And you're gonna work more, but I'm just working differently.
yeah. And you're coming at this from a perspective of values and that value of your time, that value of using your time in intentional ways. Because you're not coming at this from a, well, I'm independently wealthy, so I can just work as much as I want. Like, you need to
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah, yeah, I need to work. We have an active family and, teenagers, and they want this and that, and I'm not independently wealthy, but it's about that time use, and I recognize kinda I really sat down and crunched the numbers, and I'm like, "If I work this much, I can make pretty similar amounts that I made when I was within public health."
Exactly. That
And
was
it's kind of like a big aha moment.
mhm. A lot of people I talk to, they get to this other end where they've been years of too busy and now they're like, okay, do I need to hire a therapist? Do I need to hire an admin? What do I need to do? I'm stressed out. I created this business that I don't love. And maybe I just want to go get a job. Or they start to fantasize about working at a coffee shop. I was a barista once. Could be a barista again. But you at this very early stage, but wisdom in your life and life experiences are going, wait a minute, what's the goal here? The goal is flexibility. The goal is being able to spend time doing what you want and being able to replace your old income with less time.
Yeah,
Boom.
yeah,
Perfect.
exactly.
Just
That's
because it
exact
can get big doesn't mean it has to.
Yeah, you know what? And just sort of recognizing, like, you don't need to have my dad was a farmer, so you don't need to have the shiniest tractor in the field.
I love it.
Have one that works. And I explain to people, I'm just like, they're like, "Oh, how many clients do you have?" I'm like, "I work enough. Like, I work enough." So you have to, I think it's that determination of what enough is for you.
Mhm.
Like, what is enough for you? Like, is success a whole bunch of clients and a whole bunch of money? And, what is it? It all comes down to that values work, which is, the premise of that sort of acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yeah.
But it's all comes back to that really having a good look and really being honest with yourself about what your values are.
Now, are you always this grounded and aligned and clear on your intentions?
God, I wish, really. And then sometimes I have these things recorded because then I can, moments when I'm feeling like I'm like bounce it like I call myself I'm like a pinball sometimes, right? Bing, 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 bing.
This is why we get along so well.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'm not always, and I get frustrated with myself when I can't be grounded and when I'm pinging and ponging all over the place. And um, that's when I know that I just need to slow down and do something that's like part of my wellness. And so, what do I need to do so I can sort of get grounded? And what can I do to connect? And what do I need to stop doing? And which way do I need to pivot a little bit? And oftentimes it's not to in front of a computer or it's, putting my shoes on and my coat on and going outside for a walk. Even before I met with you today, I was like, I'm gonna go for a walk outside, even though it's sunny now, but it was gray and I just need to go outside.
Of course. Because you are the nature therapist.
I'm a nature therapist.
Yeah,
Yes.
you
Which
are.
is really such an exciting sort of place for me, but it feels sorry, that's my cat
Yeah,
meowing
I
in the
hear
back.
it. Speaking of nature,
Speaking of nature, yes, the nature therapy part of my practice, when you and I first started talking about it, you're like, wow, that's something there, Michelle. And I'm like, you think so? I don't even know. And so I was working with the nature OT down in Australia, Bronwyn, painter.
yes, I have a meeting with her in a couple hours,
Do
actually.
you? I actually had a meeting with her yesterday. So we just put together a piece for the mental health OT conference in Sydney, Australia. We just collaborated on something about nature. But you know what? I've always been kind of an outdoor person.
Mhm.
I grew up, like I said, I grew up on a farm, but I don't think I really ever sort of recognized the importance of wellness within nature. It kind of came to light for me when I broke my foot a couple years ago and I just had to sit in my backyard and let my foot heal. And because I'm not a really great still person, but it was a night's fall and I watched the trees change and the leaves change color. And I was like, wow, there's something to be said about this just being in nature instead of, going for a hike and getting this many steps in or doing it in this many hours. And I had a friend of mine over visiting me when my foot was broken and started talking to me about force therapy. And I was what is this you speak of? And so kind of went down that hole, not down a hole. It was a good hole to go down to, but I did some introduction to nature therapy, kind of creeped Bronwyn for quite a while and met you. And then I was like, that's it. And so I became a nature prescriber, which is the PARX program here in Alberta. So I do talk to people about incorporating nature into their wellness all the time. I remind them of what nature does to them. I I suggest to them about slowing down and noticing things and
'Cause
taking
it
their ear
doesn't have to be a whole day out in the mountains. Like, we've got Banff an hour from here, it's
I know.
beautiful, and we often think, "Well, that's nature," but it doesn't have to be all.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And recognizing that it doesn't like you don't have to hike a mountain in Kananaskis to
Mm.
go in nature. You can walk down your street and look at your trees and look at the sky and listen to the birds and feel the sun or the wind or whatever it is, right? And just really connect with nature. It's about sometimes taking your shoes off and just standing on the ground and getting grounded like that and feeling the earth. So it's about take OTs. It's about taking our own shoes off and about OTing ourselves. I think that's been a big thing about this private practice is that I realize some days as I grow it, as it evolves, is that I'm OTing myself. Yeah.
Totally you are, and that's it. You're practicing what you preach, and you're also preaching what you practice. Like, it's gone both ways that
Yeah.
you've got this affinity for nature, and you're sharing it with others more now, and,
Yeah.
as we grow, and I think that there's so much wisdom that we humble into at this stage of life as well, I think that kind of forces us to go, "Wait a minute, what do I actually really want to be doing? How am I gonna make that happen?" And I see you doing that.
Thanks, Carlin. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I grow up? I'm like, well, I'm grown up now. I'm adulting now. Oh my gosh, when did that happen? So yeah, it's kind of I was last winter after I just had another finger surgery. That's a whole other story, but I was out snowshoeing. I was just on the cusp of a polar vortex ending. It was like minus 27. And there was a group of 8 women, and we were out snowshoeing past Cave and Basin. was a very, very, very cold day, but it was very beautiful outside. And I, at one point during our snowshoe, I said, "Do you guys want to just all take a moment and let's just sort of really connect to nature right now, right?" Just that whole sort of like look up and look at the trees and listen and smell. Well, really, you don't want to smell too hard because your nose would freeze.
Yep.
But you know what? Like hear what you could feel and really sort of engage those senses. And it was a really quite a profound experience, not just for me, but for the other folks in the group at that point. And then we did, I think, 2 or 3 successive snowshoes after the following weekend. They're like, "Can we do that again?" Right? They're just like, "This is just," it wasn't about that whole sort of conquer mentality of let's get the trail done and how much elevation. It was about let's stop and reflect. And I think we can do that whether we're walking down the street.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even I find in just like repotting my plants and
Yes.
taking care of them inside my house in the winter.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you tend things,
Mhm.
you tend yourself too, right? Pets, plants, that tending, that your hands in the dirt, right? There was something really sort of so grounding with that.
Mhm. And there's a ton of research about that too. It's not
Mhm.
just like this sense of, "Hey, it feels good."
Yeah.
It's evidence-based that I think that I mean, I love how that's not how it started. How can we ground ourselves better? Let's put our hands in the dirt. No, we know it feels right. We know we
Right?
crave nature.
What people have been doing for millennia. Yeah.
Really cool. My family went to Peru several years ago, I guess maybe 5 or so years ago, maybe longer. And, it was a big day. We had to get someone to drive us from the place we were staying to a train, then a train to a bus, then a bus. And then we had to wait in a town for a while, then a bus up the up to Machu Picchu. The scary, sketchy back and forth, back and forth. We get up there, and by then it's probably 4 or 5 hours into our trip, right? And then we go and you get a tour guide and go around Machu Picchu and you learn all the things and stop and take your pictures at all the opportune spots. And then they pop you out and we were having lunch. And so we had lunch and my family's like, all right, should we go get the bus back? I'm like, no, we have to go back in. We have to actually feel this place. And they're like, what? Let's pick a spot. Where was everybody's favorite spot? Let's go and just sit there for 10 minutes and just
Yeah.
experience it. Really feel what it's like without a rush to just be there and soak in this magical place. And my kind of eye rolled, but they all got something out of it. And we don't pause enough because we had an agenda, right? And had to stick on someone else's timeline, but back in we went.
Oh, that's a great story. I love the fact that you recognize at that moment that you needed to go back in, right? Instead of the whole sort of check it off, did that, done that, check it off, done. Let's go. What's next? Because it is about those pauses. It's about finding awe. It's about sort of just like feeling that energy in that space that you're in. Yeah. That sounds fantastic.
How else do you find awe?
Oh, I love watching storms. Like, I think that growing up on the prairies, we always look for those big, dark hail clouds coming but there is a storm coming. We live not far from the, escarpment here in Calgary and a dog park. So we can go, and if there's a storm coming, sometimes I'll be like, "Get the car, kids, let's go." And they're like, "Oh gosh, mom's crazy again." And I find awe in storms, and I find awe in prairie sunsets, or even just looking at the golden field. I find on in the mountains, even like I'll be driving on Barlow Trail in the Northeast, and you have a good view of the mountains. I'm like, look at those beautiful things. Driving, right, landscapes. I find awe in sort of just in the colors of nature, breathing the fresh air, feeling the sun, listening to the music of the world. Yeah, I think it's and really when I see other people really appreciating it, like we do go prairie camping quite a bit and just my family out there, because my teenager just wants to be on her phone all the time. But if she'll put it down. We're out there and we'll just be engaged in the prairies and in sort of in camping. And I camp a lot, of course. We won't start my camping because I could talk with that forever.
You
But,
got a new little tiny trailer this year though, right?
my
Or
little
last year?
no, I got it in December, but started camping, I think in March, that new super tiny trailer. So I've been solo camping all summer, and a couple times with my family because they have like a big we also have a big fifth wheel, but I'd also bring my super tiny trailer, and I've learned to back that thing up, which that was a big success because at the beginning of the season, I would pull into a campground and ask somebody to help me, and then I was like, "No, that's it, I'm gonna do it myself." So it's kind of been a big year, I guess. I've started private practice and I've done lots of solo camping, both near and far, and I can hook that trailer up. There's sometimes that it will be finicky and I can hear my dad's voice in my head. Where he'll just be like, "Well, sis, it's time to ask someone for some help." And I still having to come and give me a hand, but I've it's been quite a year of solo pursuits, I guess, private practice.
And
Yeah.
you really have a natural growth mindset.
Yes.
Yes. You kinda
Yes.
go, "Okay, well, I don't know how to back this thing up. I could ask for help. Sometimes there's no help, so guess I'm learning."
Yes, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Really. Yes. You know what? Yes. It's really interesting if I look back and find the things that make me stuck in life and have when I've been stuck in life, because I think we all have.
Mhm.
But I feel like once sort of things start to evolve, it's easy, like it's much easier to see possibility and just accept sort of like this is an open field for growth. And I'm only stuck a little bit, but I'm going to figure out how to be to be unstuck.
So many things. Oh my goodness, so many things. I think nature is a perfect analogy for that too. It's because we don't get to control nature, much of nature. And so there are these variables that are out of our control and they're imperfect. And that's what makes them beautiful. That's what brings awe. These things that come and surprise us and are different than yesterday and these new experiences and or approaching old experiences through new eyes with new people and new ways of interacting. And it's so representative of how you're talking about approaching business and approaching campaign. We can't control all the things. We can learn some stuff, but ultimately you got to be a bit nimble and flexible and go with the flow, and that brings more than just resilience. It brings awe.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 Like I know I need to sort of sit back and reflect upon this year, just of the growth that I've done. And I think that recognizing sometimes finding awe within ourselves, right? Like acknowledging what we've done because we're not super awesome at that, right? Of just like, wow, look what, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back here.
It's why we have each other. It's why we
Yeah,
have each
exactly. So yeah, kind of all of those put together has led to that sort of awe and that growth mindset and that pivot and that, you know, here's a roadblock. How am I gonna get around it instead of just I'm gonna just sit here behind it. So I can't I truly can't quite believe that I do have a private practice because it's nothing that was ever I considered in my wheelhouse until I knew that was the only option in my wheelhouse that I wanted to have, right? Like I had just gotten to that point sort of in my career and I was like, okay, private practice it is. I'm gonna do this. It was like the universe had given me a few signs, breaking my foot and my weird finger break and had just shown me that, you know what, it was time. Like private practice wasn't once finally an option for me. I guess I'd always for a long time never thought that I could have a business. That I just didn't have that my brain didn't work that way. Like, how could I be a business owner? Like, I wasn't good with numbers and organizing and putting all in. I knew I was good at was working with folks, but I didn't have that business mindset. And I would drive down the road, and there would be like an old truck driving beside me, and it would say, Bob's Roofing. I'm like, even Bob could have a company.
I think
Bob's
about that.
a company. And I don't feel like I can have this company. I'm like, but Bob has one. Like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna take the chance here.
Did Bob make the logo on the side of his truck? Does Bob's wife do all of his invoicing? Does Bob do I think about these things all the time.
Right? branding. I don't know. It's so as you're driving by in like some 1994 sort of like Ford pickup that's falling apart. I'm like, yeah, Bob can have a company. I'm like, okay, you can do this.
You can do this. You can do this. And so you decided to reach out for help.
I
What
decided to reach out for help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I connected with you and I'm like, okay, my brain doesn't work this way. And
And
you're
mine
like,
doesn't really either. I learned it, but it was great to be able to share what I learned.
well, and that's what you know what, that's what we've sort of realized in discussion. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? Hey, now that I've learned it, like I kind of have some better understanding of it. It wasn't anything I'd ever tapped into before. So yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate all that. I would have these crazy questions for you. And like, what about this? And you're like, okay, just it was stuck on the name. I don't know for weeks. Couldn't decide what to name it. Like, but
It is
but yeah.
always interesting to me. There's often something really insignificant that people get stuck on in the beginning.
Mhm,
And I think it's just our crafty brains saying, don't do this, don't take a risk, don't take a
mhm,
risk. And so we
mhm.
get hyper fixated on the website or the
Yes.
name or the computer or something like that.
Yeah.
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 And then that became part of my everything, one thing at a day for my private practice, one thing at a day. And some days were bigger things, right? Where they were it was the cold January Saturday that I sat down with my laptop and went, I'm going to build a website. And my then 13-year-old daughter said, really, you? And now she looks up, she goes, it's actually pretty good. Like I'm impressed, mom. Like, and so you can teach an old dog new tricks, right? Just that recognizing that this isn't that foreign. And you just have to, that OT mindset and just putting that mirror back on yourself.
Yes. Yes. I was doing some research actually for a YouTube video last year somewhere and or sometime and came across some organization in the US that's about teaching entrepreneurship. And they have this list of 8 entrepreneurial traits that they try to teach young people to embrace these entrepreneurial traits. And when you look at them side by side with traits of OTs, the 2 lists are almost identical. I'm gonna find it actually for you right now.
That's really interesting,
Mhm.
but not surprising at all.
No. No, exactly. We just don't frame them as entrepreneurial skills, right?
No. Well, I think that probably like within the realm of that sort of scoping of going to university for OT and just in practice, like it's very much that whole sort of medical rehab perspective, but there's just that other sort of scope and that other sort of lens and other angle to look at it from.
Exactly. So it's the NFTE, which is the National Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, and they
Okay.
have 8 traits of the entrepreneurial mindset: critical thinking and problem solving,
Yep.
flexibility and adaptability, communication and collaboration, initiative and self reliance, future orientation, opportunity recognition, creativity and innovation, and comfort with risk.
Wow.
Like, what OT doesn't have those things,
I know that's just like totally that's part of our silent resume that we all have.
right? Except
Mhm.
maybe the comfort with risk, but we are by nature comfortable with some degree of risk because we have chosen an uncertain, a profession that has no right answer for everything. And we're often out in the community managing a bunch of different variables and in
Yeah,
people's homes. And so there is a certain amount of risk we mostly have.
and I think there still is that gray area. It's like,
Yeah,
we want as much evidence as we can, but sometimes we still have to like tiptoe into, we have to go into the gray area. And you're right. I would say probably some OTs would be like, no, I don't take any risk, but probably they do. They just don't recognize it as that.
for sure. I remember when
Yeah.
I was in home care and I had a palliative fellow who lived in a campground. And he lived in like a cabin in the campground. I think they managed it or something like that. Um, but nothing was standard, right? The stairways were rickety. I was pregnant. the bathroom, like the shower wall was particle board, not wood, like it was cardboard. You can't put
Yeah.
a grab bar in there or,
Right.
like a hospital bed was gonna fall through the floor there. And so I think about with evidence-based practice, like there's nobody who's done research on what the right equipment is for the guy in the campground in the wintertime who has
Right.
this condition and this
Right.
attitude about things.
Exactly. Right. Right. So that's when you have to go into that gray. You just like you just kind of make and do.
Yep,
What's the best, right? So that's that risk sort of what is the least risk.
for
So
sure.
that's a great story. Like that one.
I learned a lot in rural home care, let me tell you.
I I can only imagine.
It
Only
was
imagine.
probably my favorite job I've ever had. So it was really, really pretty cool. But still came a time where I needed to have my own business for that flexibility. And my financial goal for my business was the same, similar to what you're describing, that I wanted to essentially be able to work part-time hours and earn what I would have full-time working for Alberta Health Services. And if that's kind of my benchmark, anything else from there is gravy. And I've never missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I feel as well. I kind of miss having that sort of the direct coworker, right? The coworker down the hall. But I think that because of COVID, so much of the work that I did was virtual.
Yeah.
I didn't sort of go transition into doing private practice, going from like lots of coworkers to going virtual. I'd kind of been doing virtual for a year or more anyways. So I think I just miss coworkers for the social part of it, actually.
Yeah.
But that would be it because now I'm building a network of other OTs and I know that I can, using like not using clients' names or things like that. Like if I have colleagues that I can meet, here's a potential looking at a potential situation, like any sort of suggestions, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't happen very often actually.
I
So
think community is important, right?
yeah.
And we in private practice we have a lot of choice. And so choosing your community wisely and choosing people to hang out with and get that support from and it's really important because it can be lonely.
Yeah, 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 right, and just being able to have that connection.
Yeah.
But the virtual world has made it so that we can connect with people anywhere in the world.
Yes.
I had
Like our friend Bronwyn
a
in
friend
Australia.
Bronwyn, right? You're meeting with Bronwyn this afternoon, and I met with her yesterday afternoon, right? It was 10 o'clock morning Monday morning her time and 7:30 in the evening my time or 5:30, whatever it was. But I think that that sort of virtual world has made that easier.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
you did some coaching with Bronwyn as well.
I did some coaching with Bronwyn with her nature OT program.
Awesome.
So just trying to figure out how to like look at the evidence and how to incorporate sort of that nature into a practice
Yeah.
and just giving a really good foundation with that. She's got like her program's amazing and just that understanding of it. I think what the benefit was is that it made it real for me.
Mm.
Because conceptually you're just like, okay, yeah, like how can I bring nature into my practice? It's a great idea, but
Can
like
I
what's
just take people for walks and bill them for that? Yeah.
what's the practicality behind this and what's the evidence behind this and like what is the realities and the ideals behind it. And so working with Bronwyn, that gave me that sort of foundation to be like, yeah, you know what? This actually is more real than just really I'm thinking about.
Mhm. I'm hearing that you have invested in coaching a couple different times for a couple different ways, and that
Yeah.
seems to be serving you well in your business.
100% with you and with Bronwyn. And
Yeah.
I think that it's that recognizing that it's that just being really like owning my truth and being really honest with myself that sometimes I just need some help with this, right?
Yeah.
We talk about OTing yourself and that, but part of that is recognizing that there's parts of it that you need some help with and some direction, somebody to sort of walk beside you and hold the flashlight.
Yeah,
And
because sometimes you can't see it from your perspective.
yeah, right. And so just that understanding of like with you, it was just like how to start a business because like when I came to you, I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I know I'll be good at it, but I don't know how. And, like you kind of
Mhm.
like you walk beside me, you held a flashlight. I think that having the coaching, like with you sort of walked beside me. You didn't hand it to me. What, right? You supported me with it and you pointed me in the direction, but you allowed me the space to sort of grow into it myself, which is what I needed to do, right? Because I think that what did I want? I wanted you to hand it to me. I wanted you to if I had it, I would have, right? And it's just like, oh my gosh. But then that it made me sort of like do the work and do the pivot and sort of become much more invested in sort of the decisions and the directions that I was going with it, and to give me the confidence to be able to do this.
Mhm.
And so,
Truly, once we got past, like, we had 2 sessions and then you were off to the races. I think our 3rd session, you kept it so that you could tell me how you did it. Like, you didn't even need more help for the
yes,
3rd session.
I think that is exactly what we did. That is what we did. Yeah.
I loved it. That was such a fun surprise because I didn't realize you had run so far with it, and you just needed something to get you, like, get you out of the starting blocks.
I think it's just that foundation, right? Somebody to help me with that foundational work. I'm like, okay, I just need, because once I realized that I could do it, then I did do it. But I was getting stuck on the being overwhelmed that I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Transition planning, I think, was part of it.
yeah, yes, absolutely. Because I was working for a nonprofit that you're like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe like go full-time private practice in this month. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that. Like, no, that's not what and then surprise, surprise, that's exactly what I did. But it's kind of planting the seed and sort of letting me sit with it
Yeah.
and then grow it within there. So it
Just
was
like you do for other people.
thank you.
Hmm.
You. Thank you.
I have a couple closing questions for you.
As
What does being brave mean to you?
I think that being brave is that recognizing that you don't always need to take big footsteps forward. That sometimes you take little footsteps forward and maybe sometimes a side step, and but that you just keep moving, however however that may be.
Whatever you can
And
manage.
right? And just owning your truth. I think that's just there's been a couple of things. It's that whole sort of moving forward idea, that whole sort of just like owning your like being really honest with who you are and not carrying other people's stuff. I think that's about being brave and just being really true to yourself.
And you really have to sit with yourself to do that. You have to become aware and in tune and feel the feels and notice the thoughts and get curious in order to do that. So many people just get themselves so busy, they're too busy to stop and feel.
Mm. Oh, I'm like the queen of the hustle culture, man. Like I loved being busy. Like I love wearing a watch and filling my day. I used to
You
actually,
used to, you are not anymore like
I'm
that.
not hustle culture anymore. And I'm listening to my body and I'm listening to what works for me. And I've learned stillness and I've learned to slow down. And yeah, when I was busy, I could just ignore everything else.
Mhm.
And and it's when, as a working in a helping profession, if we're helping other people, we don't have to really think about our own stuff.
Mhm. And how
Like,
many of us went into helping professions because we've got stuff?
I know. Lots.
Yeah,
So when you slow down, you can listen to it and then you can sort of you can you can listen to your own story.
I love that.
Mhm.
What's something really brave you've done?
Oh gosh, having children, I think, has been a big thing for me. But I don't know, is it jumping out of an airplane? Is it traveling around the world solo? Because I've done those things. Something brave I've really done that I really look at. I do quite think this starting a private practice for me has been quite a brave thing. Because I'd had lots of thing and fun and out of this world experiences traveling and in my life. But I think that yeah, starting a private practice was and starting my own business was something that I never considered doing. And, I give myself a pretty good pat on the back for it. I also
Mm.
climbed some big mountains in the Himalayas that I'm pretty proud of too. So
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, all of those things are really cool. I haven't seen you do the Himalayas thing, so we might need to schedule that, but this I did watch you start your business, and it was very brave. Yeah,
thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
What would you like to see OTs be a little bit more brave about in the next few years?
Oh, I would like OGs to start to trust themselves more and
Mm,
that they have the ability to really work from a values based perspective instead of so much of a systems based perspective. Because we all came into being an OT because we value it.
mhm,
Sometimes the system pushes us away from those values. So I think that I would like to see OTs just, yeah, follow what their values and their truths are.
mhm. And that is brave because if
Mhm.
we're sometimes we might be resisting systems when we're doing so, or taking that brave step to go, okay, I know this is the right thing to do. It's not exactly what I've been told to do. And then the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah,
If we can do what we do best, the
yeah,
systems around us can sometimes learn from that. Not
exactly,
always.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. How can people connect with you?
You can through my website, which is openingdoorsoccupationaltherapy.com, or my email, which is Michelle, Michele Hampton, Hampton .ot@gmail.com. Yeah, connect. I'd love to chat. I like talking to lots of random people. So
Yes. You even call into the CBC shows sometimes.
I, I do. There's a couple stations like we call it. I have the Radio Gaga book in our house because I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have to call the radio. And I had we adopted a pandemic puppy, and we wrote a banjo song to adopt him. And I was listening to CBC one day. It was like October 2020, and they're like, "Tell me your pandemic puppy story." So I called and I told them about our banjo song and how we got Apollo. And I think that next week or the week after that, I was in the dog park telling that story. It might have been a couple months later, and the lady's like, "I've heard this story." She goes, "I heard you on CBC," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've won all kinds of things off the radio." It's
Well, there's no time for working then. You need to just be home doing your thing.
I don't do some of the contests, but if they ask some like funny stories or questions, like, "Oh, I got one, I got it." Oh, me.
I think I won tickets to a monster truck race or monster truck
Oh.
show at the Saddle Dome when I was 16 off the radio once. And it was like I was in driver's ed actually, or driving in on the ride into driver's ed, had to go into the phone booth to phone the radio station.
That's the story. That's a good story. So I got tickets to go to the monster truck rally.
Well, and I don't think I knew that that was the prize because I might not have waited on the I might not worked so hard.
Right. But it's a good story. I like it.
Well, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate everything you had to share. I think you have a lot of I think your stories will really inspire other people who are kind of wondering if they can do this.
Thanks, Carlin. I appreciate you. I appreciate you walking beside me during this journey to start this private practice and just our continued sort of connection. So, and you asked me to be here today. So, thank you.
My pleasure. Wasn't that a good discussion? I really, really admire how Michelle has gone about proceeding with intention, with integrity, and values alignment in her private practice with the ebbs and flows of life. Learning where she's found alignment, learning where she's needed to say no. I think these are really key indicators of a sustainable business, something that's going to continue to work for you, something you can adapt and grow with you're finding yourself stuck at any point in getting an OT business started, or maybe you're at a stage where your OT business has grown into a monster that you don't even like anymore, let's talk. You can book a call with me at activatevitality.online/chat-booking. You can also find that in the show notes. I'd love to chat with you, just 15 minutes to get to know each other a little bit and see where it goes from there. Thanks for listening. And as always, be brave, OTs.